Yeah.
Is the pay for teachers at charter schools the same as public schools? Or?
In practice, it's not very different, but there's no law saying that. Most charters pay their teachers reasonably well, and they want to be competitive with the market, and so they have to pay more or less what the public sector. The exception, there's sort of two important deviations to that. One is in practice, their overall payroll is much lower because the public sector has a huge seniority premium. Pay rises very steeply with seniority in the public sector. The charters never get there because most of their teachers don't teach there very long. Their model is a high turnover model. Teach for America, where your pay is subsidized and paid by outside actors to some extent, and then maybe you work for a few years and then you go do something else. And so they really, and that's controversial, but the results speak for themselves. In other words, that model seems to work. In Boston, we now have a brand new model, which is called an in-district charter. So my daughter teaches at an in-district charter. An in-district charter stays in the traditional BPS system, has almost all of the autonomy of a charter school. The staff come from outside BTU. They come from outside the union, but then they join the union, and they get union wages. So my daughter is paid very well. She gets what a unionized teacher gets in her first year. However, people like her are unlikely to teach very long, so the pay won't get very high. The other difference is the workday is very long in the charters. So the salary is the same, but I was telling Ishmael, the day is very long. So my daughter leaves the house at 6 a.m. Well, she doesn't live at home anymore, but her workday goes from 6 to 6. And then in the evening, she's expected to take calls from parents. So she's pretty much working all the time. She's not asleep. And sometimes she works on Saturdays. So that's at a fixed salary. So the hourly wage is low. And the reason that system works is it's become a sort of a thing to do. College kids are doing it not necessarily as a career, but as a step on a career path. And many of them then go on to work in management consulting or something like that. Some of them stay in education, though. A lot of charter leaders came through that system, people who start charter schools. So it's an interesting change. I didn't imagine this when 10 years ago. I would have not have guessed that such a thing would happen 20 years ago.
So which schools accept Teach for America teachers?
Charters in Boston use TFA. Regular public schools make very little use of TFA. In Boston, I don't think there's much of it. Some public districts do. It's up to the school. A lot of the charters use TFA alumni. Some use TFA interns. So an alumni is somebody who has experience as TFA. So they, the schools decide. Some principals think that the TFA kids themselves are too young to be very useful, and so they prefer the ones that sort of survive the program.
I was wondering more whether in state schools, teacher unions would be open to accepting Teach for America teachers.
They're not very happy about TFA as a rule, because it's sort of an alternative track into the system, and because the TFA kids are mostly not headed for a career in teaching. So people point this out, that the typical TFA is kind of in it to have an experience. That said, they do very well. There's a randomized evaluation of TFA, where students were randomly allocated to TFA teachers and other young teachers. And the TFA teachers, they're not certified, they didn't go to a school of education. They are as good or better. So the evidence on TFA is pretty clear. Not that TFA is perfect. It has many problems. I hear a lot about TFA in my family because I'm in a household with recent college graduates, and their friends are doing TFA, and You know, so TFA has some problems, but it has some victories as well.
Isn't there a danger of burning? I mean,
Well, in fact, it's a burnout model,
yeah,
but it works
Yeah.
because there's more to burn.
yeah.
You know, it's heavily oversubscribed, TFA. It's harder to get into TFA than to get into many selective business school programs. So that shows that there's plenty of supply. So the idea of TFA is that you get these highly motivated kids who are willing to do this. A few of them stay in teaching, many of them don't, and you just churn through them. Now, you know, that sounds unattractive in some ways, but it seems to work in the sense that it produces good outcomes.
It's not really vocational in teachers. It's just like a
Yeah.
middle step.
Some of
to
them do
something else.
stay. Some of them do stay in teaching.
You said a minority.
A minority,
Yeah.
yeah, but there are many. There are many, so. You know, my daughter, she's not TFA. She has a regular job, so she might stay. Some of my kids' friends will, you know, almost certainly move on, but in the meantime, they're contributing. So it's a dynamic system. Also, in practice, it provides a lot of the leadership. So, you know, when we go around, we talk to the principal of the Boston's most successful charters, the principal, the school leaders at KIPP, the school leader who was with us yesterday in our press conference. He has a network, Brooke. All of these guys came from TFA. So it is a kind of a training ground for leadership as well. Some of the people who don't stay as teachers stay as administrators. The other thing is that the TFA, because it attracts the relatively high end of the college graduate distribution, they have quantitative skills. So some of them go into the data side. And it's increasingly common that the better schools have a data officer, somebody who crunches the numbers on the test scores and understands, for example, our results. We go to the schools that give us data and we make presentations and we show their impact by subgroup. Now, in most schools, you wouldn't have anybody that would really be able to do anything with that information, but the good charters have people, some of them have read my book, I have to say. That's always, of course, pleasing to me. So it's a sort of change in the education market. It's turned it into something that where the training was somehow apparently not very effective, and it's made it more effective at some cost, and there's some question about scalability, but for the moment, the supply of these young people seems to be plentiful. There is, you know, it's clear that you could not staff the entire American educational system this way, but for now, there's plenty.
So thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you for your questions.
Thank you so much for coming to Spain to give us this interesting talk. Thank you.
Thank you.